Hello, my friends. Today, I will be recapping the movie called The Guardians of Galaxy Volume 3. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It all starts in a cage of little raccoons. We zoom out with Rocket's face symbolizing that it was him, and time has passed since that event. Here we realize that we are in nowhere and Rocket begins to walk while we see the rest of the Guardians building their new base. Rocket soon finds his friend Peter Quill drinking at a table because, after the events of Endgame, he lost his Gamora. Since then, Peter has suffered from deep depression and spends every day drinking. He tries to talk to Rocket, but he falls unconscious. Nebula carries him away. We see Cracklin trying to dominate John's arrow, but without success, while Adam Warlock is approaching at the speed of light. Then Adam attacks, breaking a few walls. Rocket escapes, and Gamora joins the battle with an energy attack. Unfortunately, this is not enough because Adam Warlock gets up as if nothing had happened and beats them. Groot joins the fight, trying to subdue him with his branches. However, this is not enough for the Sovereign, who rises and drags him through the structures, leaving poor Groot completely destroyed. Adam Warlock continues in search of Rocket and gives him a lethal blow. Mantis and Peter Quill manage to save their friend, and at that moment Drax appears and stands up to Adam Warlock. However, in continuing the fight, he beats them. In fact, he is about to kill them if Nebula had not regenerated her arm into a sword and gone through him, leaving Adam Warlock out of the game. Since Rocket was badly injured, everyone goes to see him and tries to heal him, but they can't. So they take him to the ship. Here, Rocket, unconscious, has memories of the past, and we learn a little more about his story. He was an experiment of the High Evolutionary, who subjected him to multiple experiments, improving him organically and robotically, and then being thrown in a cage. Here he met his cellmates, a loving otter, and a rabbit with metal legs like a spider, all some Frankensteins. The rabbit. These three animals welcomed Rocket when he was preventing him from being afraid of what would happen on the ship. While they analyze Rocket, they realize he has a switch in his heart, like he was owned by a corporation, and they can't save him unless they enter a password, which they obviously don't have. With Rocket already stable, they realize he only has about 48 hours left to live. In his system, they found the Orgosphere, the place where Rocket was modified. They decided to go to that place since to save Rocket. Meanwhile, we go to a planet called Counter-Earth, where the High Priestess has arrived with Adam Warlock, who is wounded. We meet the Evolutionary, who arrives very upset just to ask him if they have captured Rocket. Well, the High Evolver ordered them to capture him and bring him to him, and since they have not succeeded, he calls them useless. He also submits Adam Warlock against the wall and orders him to find Rocket, or else he will destroy all his people. The High Evolutionary was the one who created them. From here, we go to space, where the Guardians have finally arrived at Orgosphere in a beautiful view of space. They will break the shields to enter. In the next scene, we continue with Rocket's flashbacks. We discover how the High Evolutionary taught him mathematics and quantum physics. At one point, he takes him to his laboratory where he shows him the programmed evolution of a turtle over billions of years. We see how in the process, this defenseless turtle evolved into an evil and aggressive being, which seemed like a complete failure to the High Evolver. Well, he was looking for peaceful beings to create a perfect civilization. It's at that moment that Rocket interrupts to tell him that the problem is in the supply of an amino acid that causes the turtles to evolve into violent and aggressive beings. The High Evolutionary impressed with Rock's intelligence. At the same time, the Guardians reach the surface and proceed to make an incision in the structure. The security camera inspector realizes that there is something unusual, so he orders to send some guards to check. But the guards had already entered and were camouflaged with corporation suits. The guards do not notice anything unusual. Even Peter talks with the leader. So they begin their plan to infiltrate until they obtain the code with which they can save Rocket. They infiltrate on the side while Peter Quill, Gamora, and Nebula go to the command center to make a short-haired woman named Yura give them the file of Rocket. Gamora threatens her with a gun. She is forced to download Rocket's file, but at that moment the alarms are activated and all the guards arrive, cornering them. They have to fight. Mantis uses her charms to make her enemies do what she wants. She tells them while Drax uses brute force. For a moment, it seems like they are winning while Peter, Nebula, and Gamora defend themselves. Groot is ordered to descend with the ship to extract all the Guardians with Rocket's information. In the middle of the battle that Drax seemed to be winning, the guard shoots him, leaving Mantis worried about the wound. Here it seems that everything is lost, but Peter accesses the system and deactivate all the guards. Groot arrives immediately, and the Guardians escape from there. We are going to continue learning about Rocket's sad story, because by living with his cellmates, they became friends, and they all chose names. The walrus got Toothy, the rabbit was named Floor, and the otter Layla. Of course, here, Rocket was still called P-13, and he decided to name himself Rocket. Peter, Quill, and the rest of the Guardians observe Rocket's file. Here they find multiple recordings of how he was subjected to different surgeries by the High Evolver, leaving everyone with a stunned look until Nebula says that this is worse than what Thanos did to her. When they investigate the file, they realize the Guardians finally arrive on Counter-Earth, a planet that looks very similar to Earth. They are surprised to meet genetically modified human-animal hybrids. The lady shows them a ship in the distance where they can find the High Evolutionary's ship. Flashbacks. On the night when Rocket was returned to his cage by the surgeon of the High Evolver, he knew it was the end for him and his friends. So, using the pieces of technology he had collected over time, he built a tool to open the door and free his friends. He told them that ships were at the end of the corridor, and they could now escape and finally be free. However, when he finally freed the otter, the High Evolver shot her, assuming she was going to escape like Rocket. The otter was one of Rocket's only friends, and he screamed in pain and launched himself at the High Evolver, leaving him faceless. Immediately, guards appeared and shot at Rocket, killing the walrus and the rabbit, his last two friends. That day, Rocket lost everything and had nothing else to lose. He escaped between the shots and managed to pilot a ship out of that traumatic place. In the present, Peter confronts the High Evolver. At that moment, a cyborg pig goes in search of Rocket, brutally beating Gamora, and is about to take Rocket. However, before he can do so, Adam Warlock approaches to deliver Rocket to the High Evolver and take the credit to save the Sovereigns from destruction.
Enraged by the villain's horrific actions against innocent lives. However, it quickly becomes clear that the madman has no intention of stopping, instead opting to destroy the planet and start anew. As the once beautiful world is torn asunder, Adam desperately tries to save his beloved Aisha, only to witness her ship be obliterated before his very eyes. Outnumbered, Peter and Groot stand their ground against High Evolutionary's henchmen, fearlessly jumping out of the window with Thiel. However, Groot, with his superhuman abilities, sprouts wings, allowing him and Peter to stay afloat as he drowns Thiel and snatches his memories. The Guardians hurried back to their ship, racing against a backdrop of destruction as the planet imploded behind them. However, the chaotic events saw Mantis, Drax, and Nebula transported onto High Evolutionary's vessel, while Peter, Groot, Rocket, and Gamora managed to arrive safely back on their own ship. In the midst of all the tension and conflict, Nebula took out her frustration on Drax, blaming him for their current predicament. Despite this, Mantis was quick to rush to Drax's defense, well aware that he had a habit of doing silly things that often landed them in sticky situations. Peter, Gamora, and Groot frantically race against time to use the passkey and save Rocket, who finds himself in an ethereal realm. As Lilla, Teefs, and Floor appear to welcome him to the afterlife, Rocket is almost ready to accept his fate until Lilla reminds him that he still has a purpose left in life. They share a fleeting but passionate kiss before Rocket comes back to the land of the living and warmly embraces his comrades. As they receive a transmission from Nebula, the Guardians discover that High Evolutionary has been experimenting on a large group of captive children. They hear Rocket's voice over the radio and are overjoyed to know he's alive, but their celebration is short-lived when High Evolutionary captures them. Peter leads his team on a daring mission to save their captive friends and reaches out to Kraglin for assistance. Drax's ability to connect with the kidnapped children in their native language is heartwarming, and he even manages to elicit laughter by being his silly self, just as he did with his own daughter. Alongside Mantis and Nebula, the trio face 3 fearsome abelisks, but with Mantis' psychic powers, the beasts become their allies in the upcoming battle. While Kraglin and Cosmo strive to bring the ship and Nowhere closer, the High Evolutionaries' army attacks. Fortunately, Kraglin's encounter with a vision of Yondu galvanizes him to use his heartfelt desire to propel the arrow, allowing him to annul the High Evolutionaries' drones. As for Cosmo, she uses her telekinetic abilities to take down a henchman. When the High Evolutionaries' minions rebel, he vaporizes them with his powers. Upon regrouping, the Guardians are reinforced by the arrival of Adam and Blurp, resulting in an epic showdown with High Evolutionaries' army that leaves no survivors. Thanks to Cosmo's incredible powers that she manages to take the ship closer to Nowhere, allowing the team to rescue a group of children before taking them to safety. Meanwhile, Rocket comes across a pack of adorable baby raccoons, along with other animals in need of help, and begins to work on freeing them. Unfortunately, High Evolutionary catches up with him and threatens to end him once and for all, insisting that he is merely a failed experiment. But Rocket refuses to back down, reminding him of his true identity and determination to fight for good. As the other Guardians burst onto the scene, High Evolutionary gets a serious beatdown before Nebula tears off his face, revealing the horrific disfigurement that Rocket inflicted on him. While Rocket chooses not to end High Evolutionary's life, they don't bother offering him a helping hand, instead leaving him to die in the explosion of his ship. Rocket does, however, manage to free the other animals, but Cosmo's powers give out, leaving Peter stranded in space where he nearly perishes from the harsh cold until Adam rescues him and takes him to safety at Nowhere. As they regroup at Nowhere, the Guardians share one last moment together before going their separate ways. With Gamora set to continue collaborating with the Ravagers, Peter decides that it's finally time to return to his place of birth, Earth. Meanwhile, Mantis expresses her desire to venture out on her own to uncover what she truly wants for herself. Mantis turns down Drax's offer to join her on her mission, preferring to go alone. Nebula suggests that Drax would be better suited to taking care of the children, given that he was always meant to be a daddy. Meanwhile, she will take charge of Nowhere. In recognition of his leadership qualities, Peter passes his title of leader to Rocket, who will head the next Guardians of the Galaxy team. Although Peter and Gamora acknowledge that they can't be together, they still share some flirtatious banter. Once the group parts ways, Rocket is given Peter's Zune device, and he proceeds to play "Dog Days Are Over" for the inhabitants of Nowhere to enjoy and dance along to. In the mid-credits scene, Rocket and Groot lead an epic team consisting of Kraglin, Cosmo, Adam, Blurp, and the orphan child named Phyla. As a horde of enemies approach, Rocket plays "Come and Get Your Love," leading them on an electrifying adventure. Meanwhile, in the post-credits scene, Peter and Jason exchange heartfelt words over breakfast as they discuss Jason's stepson from his second marriage. The final text shows that the legendary Star-Lord will return.